Hi there, this is Verashni Pillay with your weekly wrap of news you really do need to know. In this week's edition, we're looking at how the price of basically everything is going up and how that's kind of Russia's fault, plus the latest about that particular conflict. We also look at some exciting moves in our justice space with both the NPA and our policing. So, welcome to your weekly update of empowering and easy to understand news, brought to you by myself and the Explained Occursa team. First up in our take, tighten your belt some more. Just when we thought we were past the January blues, the latter half of February emerged from the shadows and whacked us with price hikes across the board. First up, there's petrol. The petrol price increased to a whopping 21 Rand 6 cents a litre inland and 20 Rand 88 cents on the coast on Wednesday. This is the first time the price of petrol shot past the 20 Rand mark in our country. It hit 20 Rand for the first time last year. Now, the recent increase was slightly cushioned by the Rand's stronger performance over the past couple of months. But as the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine escalates, we're likely to see more increases. But what causes these increases? As we've previously told you, it's determined by three factors. Firstly, fuel import costs, hence Russia being a bit of a player in that. Secondly, our government's regulation of the costs and profits of wholesale retailers. Now, wholesale retailers are the guys who supply the petrol stations where you and I fill up our cars, plus the services that transport fuel. And lastly, the tax and levies that go towards the Road Accident Fund, otherwise known as the fuel levy. Now, this past budget, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana thankfully did not increase the fuel levy referred to previously. It's now still at 6 Rand 11 cents a litre. But government unfortunately has very little space to maneuver generally when it comes to cushioning us from increasing petrol prices because they use an internal buffer called the slate levy to do that, and that's been all used up at this point. So, the South African National Taxi Council said it may look at finally increasing taxi fares after avoiding doing so for some time, and that's going to really affect working class people. The price of fuel also increased in some parts of Europe and Britain this week, and again, that's thanks to Russia. Moving on to food costs, bad news here too, guys, according to the latest Household Affordability Index in South Africa. This index looks at the cost of an average household food basket, and that's made up of 44 core food products, most frequently bought by the lower income households that make up most of South Africa. So the latest version of this index found that the cost of this particular basket has increased to 355 Rand and 70 cents in February 2022. And that's an increase of several hundred Rand. Previously, the same time last year, it was just over 4,000 Rand. Now, only 5 items became cheaper. Everything else became more expensive and maize meal stayed the same. Again, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict comes into play. According to agri-economist Wandile Sihlobo, the price of some commodities, especially wheat, is set to rise. And lastly, electricity. The National Energy Regulator of South Africa has finally come back to Eskom on its requested increase and has given it a 9.1% increase in electricity prices, which will come into effect on the 1st of April. How appropriate for South Africans who feel like we're being taken for fools. Thankfully, this is nearly half the 20.5% increase Eskom controversially applied for in January. The utility is not thrilled about not getting more, while opposition parties say that 9.1% is still too high and it's above inflation. So all in all, there's no sugarcoating it here. It's going to be tough on your budget. Expect your budget to increase, keep your existing costs down, and don't take on any more expenses. Hold off buying that new car for now, guys. Moving on to your big story, Russia is cancelled. Things are escalating at an unimaginable speed in Ukraine. As we reported last week, Russia invaded parts of Ukraine and launched missiles at cities, including the capital of Kiev. This came after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that he formally recognized separatist regions of Ukraine led by pro-Russian rebels. So what has been happening in the past week? Well, by day 8 of the conflict, the UN recorded at least 227 civilian deaths, but said that this was likely to be far higher in reality. Plus, nearly 1 million Ukrainians have already fled the country. Secondly, Russia and Ukraine held talks in Belarus, which borders both countries, on Monday, but there was no resolution. They will try to meet for a second round of negotiations. Meanwhile, the International Criminal Court will, after obtaining the support of 39 countries to do so, begin an investigation into possible war crimes by Ukraine's then government, which was aligned with Russia back in 2013. Russia has taken complete control of Kherson, meanwhile, a key port city right at the bottom of Ukraine on the Black Sea coast. Russian forces have forced its way into the city council buildings and imposed a curfew on citizens. Now, the capture of the city, Kherson, has raised fears that Russia is creating a military base to push further inland into the rest of the country. Meanwhile, a number of sporting fraternities, including soccer body FIFA, have banned Russia from participating in their events. In tennis, Ukraine's Elena Svitolina says she would not compete against a Russian or Belarusian athlete for the foreseeable future. And in news and entertainment, South Africa's MultiChoice stopped airing Russia's state news channel Russia Today due to EU sanctions. Apple will stop selling its products and providing services like Apple Pay. Netflix will pause projects and acquisitions in Russia. And Spotify closed its Russian offices until further notice, citing safety concerns. The Cannes and European film festivals will neither allow Russian delegates and attendees nor showcase Russian productions. So loads of blows to the country. But what does this all mean for us here in South Africa? The conflict has a significant impact on the global economy, especially when it comes to trade. Russia is a big player in energy exports, while both Russia and the Ukraine are major exporters of wheat and corn. We're already seeing the price of fuel increasing across the globe, as we mentioned before. Less stable emerging market currencies like our own will also be affected. They say when the US sneezes, the world catches a cold. And it seems that when Russia starts a war, the globe catches pneumonia. Moving on to your briefs, Ramaphosa appoints a new NPA investigative head. Our National Prosecuting Authority is in charge of proving that crooks belong in jail, and its investigating directorate is central to that role. So it was a blow when its head, Hermione Cronje, resigned in December, citing exhaustion and frustrations about the directorate's operations. She reportedly struggled to pursue key state capture prosecutions because of limited resources and budget. Cronje served her last day on Tuesday, and we were all prepared for a long wait for a replacement, as President Cyril Ramaphosa is not exactly known for taking fast action. On that note, it's been 142 days since we've had a permanent Chief Justice. Thankfully, also on Tuesday, Ramaphosa announced a slew of appointments, including advocate Andrea Johnson as Cronje's replacement. He acted pretty fast this time. So the good news is that Johnson is an impressive choice for the job. She led investigations and prosecutions against the like of mining millionaire Brett Kebble and Jackie Selebi, South Africa's notorious former National Police Commissioner, as well as appearing alongside Gerrie Nel in Oscar Pistorius' murder trial. Johnson was previously interviewed to head up the NPA in 2018. That post went to advocate Shamila Batoy, who now becomes her boss. Now, with 25 years of experience, Johnson has been described as a no-nonsense person who has a knack for getting things done. Her appointment comes on the back of concerns that the NPA is delaying high-profile prosecutions and follows the release of the three-part state capture report, which we get to later. South Africans are getting impatient, and we've previously noted concerns with the NPA. Hopefully things will be different for Johnson's when it comes to resources, at least. The last budget, which was announced recently, allocated funds to appoint 90 people to her unit. So hopefully she will have a better experience than her predecessor, Hermione Cronje. Speaking about the state capture report, after years of listening to testimony, Justice Raymond Zondo is under pressure to produce results, and he's been putting out reports apace since January. The third and final report of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry was released this week and features Zondo's most significant findings against former President Jacob Zuma to date, recommending he face prosecution for possibly violating the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act. But what's the report about? At 942 pages, it focuses on all things Bosasa, the prison and security company owned by the late Gavin Watson. According to the report, the company was awarded at least 2.37 billion rand since 2000, but a previous Mail and Garden report put that number closer to 12 billion rand over a decade. Now, Bosasa's modus operandi was to target prominent government officials and dispense largesse in exchange for their promise of influencing tender awarding processes, as the Daily Maverick noted. ANC chairperson Gwede Mantashe and former Environmental Affairs Minister Nomvula Mokonyane also play starring roles in the report for receiving benefits from the company, from security upgrades to a lavish 40th birthday in Mokonyane's case. The report recommends that Zuma, Mantashe and Mokonyane be prosecuted by the NPA along with 60 other individuals. The NPA was allocated 1.1 billion rand in the recent budget for the next 3 years, but it needs much more. Justice Minister Ronald Lamola has pointed out in Parliament this week that government coffers will never have enough to meet the demand on prosecutors in light of Zondo's extensive findings. So, the NPA is working with Treasury to explore donor funding without undermining its independence, according to Lamola. We're guessing that there'll be plenty of donors to support a cause like this. We're just not looking forward to the accusations of white monopoly capital that will no doubt follow it. Moving on to our accountability monitor, more Ramaphosa and his cleanup campaign, this time with the police. During his State of the Nation address last month, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that he would set things straight in the South African police service, especially after it failed to properly handle events around the July riots. Now, we saw him start to make good on that promise this week when he fired National Police Commissioner General Kehla Sitole after they reached a, quote, mutual agreement, close quote. Sitole's name has been mentioned in one of Zondo's state capture reports. Evidence shows that he was involved in procuring phone tapping devices ahead of the ANC's 2017 NASRAC conference. He also faces 2 criminal charges for failing to cooperate in an investigation related to the assassination of anti-gang unit commander Charles Kinnear. But Ramaphosa is getting flack for allowing Police Minister Bheki Cele to keep his job. Cele was also responsible for failing to keep things under control during July's lootings, which caused enormous damage to our economy and international standing. Sitole and Cele do not see eye to eye, and this may have led to poor coordination of policing during their chaos. Ramaphosa is putting his feelers out for a new police commissioner, but the question remains, what happens to Cele? Political analyst Ralph Mateja says that Ramaphosa was playing safe ahead of the ANC conference this year and did not seek to create further unhappiness in KwaZulu-Natal, where Cele hails from. Now, the South African Human Rights Commission found that Cabinet must take full responsibility for the events of July 2021. And this is Ramaphosa's first stab at doing so, but he needs to put aside party concerns and take more action. While we're talking about accountability, the NPA's Hermione Cronje scored a win on her last day in office. After months of wrangling, Interpol issued red notices for Atul and Rajesh Gupta. This restricts their travel and paves the way for their eventual extradition to South Africa to face justice. The net is closing in on the masterminds behind the state capture project. Onto some adulting. There's 2 updates on this front. Firstly, on your license, several licensing centres across Gauteng have been closed after the National Driving School Association of South Africa protested against a new online driving licence and testing booking system. The new system saves you and I a buck, as we can make bookings ourselves without going through third parties like a driving school instructor. Third parties, however, cannot make bookings on the system at all. Previously, a driving school instructor could financially benefit from booking a slot for a learner driver. The new system means that they lose money. There have also been complaints of instructors overbooking slots to make more money. The new system essentially prohibits this practice. The association said it will take legal action to suspend the new system. The system that caused all the trouble was launched last month in an attempt to curb the inconvenience of physically going to booking centres and waiting in queues, as well as removing the risk of spreading COVID-19, the Road Traffic Management Corporation says. The new system can be accessed via the government's driving licence portal. On to some other news, your municipal bill. If you're a Joburg resident, you'll be pleased to know that the City of Johannesburg has decided to extend its debt rehabilitation program. The program was to expire this week, but has been extended until the 30th of June 2022. If you're indebted to the City of Joburg, you can get up to 50% written off. The program is meant to ease the financial burden on ratepayers, especially amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The debt write-off only applies to residents whose combined property value is below 1.5 million rand, for NGOs and other businesses that make less than 3 million rand. For account holders to qualify for a 50% debt write-off, they must be in arrears for more than 90 days with a gross monthly income below 22,000 rand. On to some Hollywood news. Award season is here. Some COVID habits persist, though. These grand affairs are still being held via hybrid settings, combining at-home attendance with some in-studio production. So 2 major ceremonies happened in the past week. The first was the 28th Screen Actor Guild Awards, or SAG, and the 53rd NAACP Awards, which recognizes achievements by entertainers of color. Historically, the NAACP fought for African American civil rights. Now, the streaming giants were the Screen Actor Guild Awards' big winners. Apple TV won for Ted Lasso from Britain, and Netflix won for Squid Game from South Korea. They won the Best Comedy and Drama categories, respectively. At the NAACP Awards, multi-hyphenate Jennifer Hudson was the star of the evening. She walked away with the title of Entertainer of the Year, beating out some of the hottest hip-hop stars of the moment, like Lil Nas X and Megan Thee Stallion. And she scooped Outstanding Actress in a Motion Picture. Hudson was handpicked by her mentor, the legendary and now sadly late singer Aretha Franklin, to play Franklin in the biopic Respect. Now, there were some raised eyebrows over an NAACP award to Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle. The pair have done some charity work and partnered with the NAACP, but some on social media noted that others had done more and were more deserving of the award. Harry is part of an institution that for many symbolizes centuries of racial oppression. Plus, there are his own pre-woke days of hanging out in mostly white clubs, dressing up like a Nazi officer at a colonials and natives party in his youth, calling a fellow army cadet a pucky, and telling another that he looked like a raghead. Yeah, no, hey? As one columnist put it, over the course of the last 6 months, as Harry has spoken out more regularly about social justice and systemic racism, he has never ever explicitly addressed his own past. Finally, the nonsensical census. The 2022 census, which kicked off at the start of February, is said to be the most important to be undertaken in South Africa since the end of apartheid. It comes against a backdrop of state capture, a pivotal change in politics and leadership, soaring cases of gender-based violence, and, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the fourth census South Africa has run since apartheid ended. The last was in 2011. But the LGBTQI community has raised concerns that the survey conflates gender and sex and fails to include intersex people or questions related to sexual orientation. Intersex people do not fit typically binary notions of male or female bodies. Sex refers to an individual's biology, while gender, a social construct, refers to how an individual identifies themselves. Activists argue that the exclusionary nature of the survey means the data will be inaccurate and the needs of this community will not be met. There have been calls to amend the survey, but Stats SA has said it's drawn up using UN guidelines. Well, that's it from us at The Wrap, an award-winning product of Explain.coza, simple news summaries for busy people. The Wrap is sponsored by Explain's agency division, who specialize in content marketing for purpose-driven organizations, often with a pan-African reach. Mail info@explain.coza for a quote. And finally, remember to share the love. Tell your friends to sign up for the updates at explain.coza/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.